She was a plus-size single mother drowning under bills, exhaustion, and guilt. One cold November afternoon, she kissed her son on the forehead, whispered, "I love you," and walked away, believing that abandoning him at a crowded station might be the only way to save him. But fate had other plans. Hours later, a Millionaire volunteer bus driver passed by. He wasn't supposed to be there. He wasn't supposed to look through the glass. Yet something, destiny, instinct, grief, pulled his eyes toward a tiny boy sitting alone with a leg brace and a worn-out bunny. What he saw froze him. The quiet sadness, the trembling hope, the innocence waiting faithfully for a mother who wasn't coming back. Fear surged through him. Was this child lost? Abandoned? What kind of pain leads a mother to make such a choice? But then, unexpectedly, this broken moment cracked open a second chance neither of them saw coming. A moment that would lead to a new home, a new beginning, and a love powerful enough to heal two shattered hearts. This is the story of a child left behind, and the stranger who chose to become his family. The November sky over Aurora Central Station in Colorado was the color of bruised steel, heavy and low, pressing its weight against the glass roof. Commuters rushed past in blurred streams of coats and luggage, their footsteps echoing sharp and hollow across the marble floor. At the far end of a row of plastic benches, a little boy sat very, very still. He clutched a small, worn-out bunny by its floppy ear, holding it so tight his knuckles were white. A metal brace hugged his left leg from calf to ankle, his gray sock slightly rolled down, his shoe a size too big. His name was Luca Rivera. He was 3 years old, and he was waiting. "Mommy's just buying tickets," he whispered to the bunny, stroking its threadbare fur. "She'll be right back. You'll see." He had been repeating those words for so long, they'd begun to sound like a song with only one note left. Hours earlier, the woman who had told him that promise had sat beside him on the very same bench, trying not to break apart. Her name was Maya Rivera, 32 years old, plus size, with soft, dark hair scraped into a tired bun and a face that might have been pretty once, before grief hollowed it out. Her winter coat strained a little at the buttons when she moved, and her cheap black leggings dug into her stomach when she bent to tie Luca's shoelace. To strangers, she was just another exhausted single mother. Only Maya knew the storm tearing her apart from the inside. 6 months ago, her world had split in two. She had gone into labor at St. Gabriel's Medical Center with a ballooning mixture of fear and joy. The baby's father, Diego, had left when the pregnancy got complicated, saying all the right coward's words. "I'm not ready. We can't afford this." Fine, she had thought. She would be both parents if she had to. She'd done harder things in life. But the delivery went wrong. Horribly wrong. The baby hadn't been getting enough oxygen. Alarms had sounded, nurses had rushed, and a woman with tired eyes and a kind voice, Dr. Ellen Hart, had told Maya words that would tattoo themselves into her soul. "We can save him," the doctor had said, "but there will be damage. His left leg, maybe more. He'll need years of therapy, maybe surgery. It won't be easy." "Save my son," Maya had rasped. "Whatever it takes. Just save him." They did, and they sent her home with a fragile baby who screamed with pain every time his tense little muscles spasmed, and a folder of bills that might as well have been written in a foreign language called impossible. Maya worked nights as a hotel cleaner, dragging her heavy body from room to room while her mother watched Luca. She took double shifts, then triple, until her knees throbbed and her lower back burned. Rent, formula, therapy sessions, pain medication, orthopedic exams, Everything cost money she never really had. Her mother's health began to crumble. Diego never came back. The weight of everything found one place to land, right on Maya's shoulders, already carrying more than they were ever meant to bear. Then, in October, St. Gabriel's sent the last letter. Final notice, balance due. 61,800. That night, after a double shift, Maya sat at her chipped kitchen table, the letter trembling in her hands. Luca asleep in the next room with his brace squeaking every time he moved. She stared at the numbers until they blurred. "I'm breaking you," she whispered to the dark. "Just by existing like this, I'm breaking you." A thought slid into her mind like a knife she didn't want to hold. What if a better family found him? Someone with money, influence, a house with soft carpets instead of peeling linoleum, a father who didn't flinch at hospital corridors. She fought the thought for days, weeks, but exhaustion has a way of turning terrible ideas into lifelines. And so, on a fading November afternoon, she brought Luca to Aurora Central Station. She sat with him on the bench, his small body warm against her side. Her own body feeling too big, too clumsy, too wrong for the role of good mother. Cameras watched from the ceiling. People streamed past. It was, she told herself, a safe place to do a monstrous thing. "Luca," she said softly, brushing his blonde curls away from his forehead. "Do you see all the trains?" His eyes lit up. "They're so big, Mommy." "I'm going to buy our tickets," she lied, swallowing the taste of metal in her mouth. "You stay here with Bunny, okay? I'll be right back." He nodded, trusting her like only a child can. "Okay, Mommy." Maya leaned in and kissed his forehead. Her lips lingered there, memorizing the warmth. "I love you," she whispered, "more than anything. Remember that no matter what." He smiled. "Love you, Mommy." Then she stood up and walked away. Every step toward the exit felt like walking barefoot over broken glass. She passed the ticket counter without stopping, past the cafe where coffee and burnt sugar scented the air, past the sliding doors that opened on a wind so cold it slapped the breath from her lungs. Maya didn't look back, because if she did, she knew she would run to him, fall at his feet, and never find the courage or the madness to leave again. So she stepped out into the November evening, her heart breaking in a way that had no sound. Back inside, under the harsh fluorescent lights, Luca sat on the bench with his bunny and his brace, waiting for a mother who wasn't coming back. And by the bus stop outside the station, a black SUV slowed, engine humming quietly, as a man in a simple dark coat lifted his gaze toward the glass and noticed a small boy sitting alone. The evening chill was sharp enough to sting as Ethan Ward stepped off his volunteer bus route and onto the curb outside Aurora Central Station. He adjusted the collar of his dark wool coat, exhaled, and watched his breath bloom into a pale ghost in the air. No one who passed him would guess who he really was. Not the Ethan Ward, CEO, investor, philanthropist, whose face had once been printed on magazine covers under headlines like "The Man Who Built an Empire from Nothing." Tonight, he was simply a man trying to outrun the echo of an empty house. He locked the bus, slung his worn backpack over one shoulder, and glanced instinctively toward the station's glass wall, and froze. A tiny boy sat alone on a bench, legs dangling, brace glinting under the fluorescent light. His bunny hung limply from his hand like it, too, was tired of waiting. Something in Ethan's chest tightened. Not because the boy resembled his son, he didn't. But the expression, that steady, patient hurt. It was the same look Ethan had seen on Noah's face on the last morning of his life. arms thin, skin pale, hope flickering but stubborn, an expression no child should ever wear. Ethan didn't realize he had already walked halfway into the station until the warm blast of indoor heat hit his cheeks. He approached slowly, careful not to frighten the boy. "Hey, buddy," he said gently, crouching down. "Are you waiting for someone?" The boy blinked up with big blue eyes. "Mommy's getting tickets." Ethan glanced around. The station was nearly empty. No woman searching anxiously, no suitcase, nothing. "How long has she been gone?" Ethan asked carefully. The boy looked toward the high window where the sky was now ink dark. "When the sky was orange," he said. "Hours." The tightening in Ethan's chest became a fist. "What's your name?" "Luca," the boy answered, hugging his bunny a little closer. Then, as if remembering something important, "Luca Rivera." Ethan swallowed the sudden rush of emotion. "What's your mommy's name?" "Maya." Ethan nodded slowly. "Okay, Luca. Do you mind if I sit with you while we try to find her?" The boy nodded and scooted a little to the side, leaving space for him. Ethan sat down. Something inside him, something dormant, bruised and hollow, shifted painfully. Luca looked up. "Are you a daddy?" The question cracked straight through him. Ethan drew in a shaky breath. I used to be." Luca nodded in the solemn, thoughtful way children do when they don't fully understand, but still want to show kindness. A soft voice called from behind the ticket counter. "Sir, do you need help?" It was a station attendant. Gina, a woman in her 40s with tired eyes and a scarf wrapped twice around her neck. Ethan stood and approached her. "Can you check if Amaya Rivera bought tickets today?" Gina tapped the keyboard, shook her head. "No purchases under that name." His stomach dropped. He dialed 911. While waiting, he returned to Luca, whose legs now swung nervously. "Did Mommy say anything before she left?" Ethan asked. Luca nodded. "She said she loves me, and to remember. Remember." That felt like a goodbye. Ethan felt the air thicken around him. Someone hadn't simply forgotten their child. Someone had broken under a weight too heavy to bear. Minutes later, 2 officers arrived. They questioned Ethan, asked Luca gentle questions, searched the camera logs. But Maya was gone. An hour passed, then another. The police confirmed what Ethan already knew deep in his bones. The child had been abandoned, and then something happened. Something small, but enough to unravel Ethan completely. Luca leaned his head against his arm and whispered, "Will Mommy find me if I fall asleep?" Ethan's voice cracked as he answered, "I'll stay with you. I won't let you be alone." And for the first time in years, he meant every word. He didn't know yet that this moment, this fragile, heartbreaking moment, was the beginning of something that would change both their lives. Forever. The next morning, the frost clung to the windows of Aurora Child Services Center, turning the glass into sheets of white lace. Ethan stood in the lobby, clutching a small paper bag of toys he'd bought on the way. Puzzle blocks, coloring pencils, a set of animal flashcards he wasn't sure a 3-year-old would like, but felt compelled to bring anyway. He wasn't sure why he'd come back, only that he'd barely slept, his mind circling around one image: a small boy with a brace on his leg, clutching a bunny, waiting faithfully for a mother who would never walk back through those glass doors. The social worker greeted him with surprised eyebrows. "Mr. Ward, you actually returned." "I said I would," Ethan replied, softer than he intended. She led him down a hallway lined with children's drawings: lopsided suns, rainbow houses, stick-figure families holding hands. Ethan's throat tightened. Luca didn't have a picture like that. When they reached the playroom, Luca sat at a tiny table scribbling circles on a blank sheet. His brace made soft squeaks every time he shifted. "Luca," the social worker called gently. "Someone's here to see you." The boy looked up, and his face lit with pure recognition. "Bus man," he squealed. Ethan laughed, a sound he hadn't heard from himself in a long time. "I guess that's me." Luca held up his drawing. "What's this?" Ethan asked. "Numbers," Luca said proudly. "Bunny says circles can make numbers go forever." Ethan blinked. The circles weren't scribbles. They were divided in perfect fractions, numbers written in looping lines, repeating decimals, something no 3-year-old should recognize. "Who taught you that?" Luca shrugged. "I see it." The social worker leaned in. "He's been doing this since he arrived. The caregivers think he may be gifted. Gifted. Extraordinary. Abandoned." The combination twisted something in Ethan's ribs. He sat with Luca for nearly an hour, watching him assemble puzzle blocks with startling speed, turning pieces with the same instinctive precision Ethan had once seen in data analysts years into their careers. By the time Ethan left the center, there was a new thought forming in the quietest corner of his mind. This child deserves a chance the world won't give him on its own. That afternoon, Ethan made a decision. He had to find the mother, not to punish her, but to understand how a woman could walk away from something so small and brilliant and fragile. With a few phone calls, he hired a private investigator, someone discreet, familiar with quiet cases involving missing parents, runaway families, or people drowning quietly under the weight of their own lives. It took 4 days. 4 days of checking old addresses, hospitals, shelters, debt records, until the investigator finally called. "We found her." Maya Rivera was living in a budget motel on the outskirts of Aurora, where the neon sign flickered in and out like a dying heartbeat. The parking lot was half ice, half cracked asphalt. Ethan climbed the creaking stairs to room 12B, hesitated, then knocked. A long silence, then a scraping sound. The door opened a few inches. Maya stood in the shadow, her hair unwashed, her cheeks hollow, her body bundled in an oversized hoodie stretched tight across her curves. Her eyes, they were the most heartbreaking thing about her. Red, exhausted, guilty. "I know who you are," she whispered, voice trembling. "You're the man who found him." Ethan swallowed. "Yes. I'm not here to judge you. Everyone judges me. Not me." Maya's breath hitched. Her fingers dug into the doorframe as if it were the only thing holding her upright. "I tried," she choked. "I worked every shift. I fed him before feeding myself. I love him so much it hurts." Tears spilled. But love doesn't pay medical bills. Love doesn't fix a leg brace. Love doesn't erase $61,000 of debt. Ethan stepped forward, voice gentle. "Maya, abandoning him wasn't selfish. It was desperation." Her shoulders collapsed. "I left my baby," she whispered. "Do you know what that makes me?" "A mother who broke," Ethan said softly. "Not a monster." Silence fell. Then Maya looked up, eyes trembling with fear and hope. What's going to happen to him?" Ethan took a breath that felt like stepping across a line he could never uncross. "He's safe. He's bright. He needs stability. He needs a home." Maya's voice cracked. "I can't give him one." Ethan met her gaze. "But I can." The words hung in the stale motel air. Heavy, impossible, and somehow right. And in that moment, both of them understood. Nothing about their lives would ever be the same again. The courthouse on Riverstone Avenue always smelled faintly of paper, polished floors, and old grief. Families came here to break or to mend, rarely anything in between. On a gray December morning, Maya sat before Judge Ravenwood, her trembling hands folded tightly in her lap, her plus-size frame hunched inward as if bracing for a storm. Her hair was brushed, her clothes borrowed from a charity closet, but nothing could hide the exhaustion carved into her features. She looked like a woman carrying her own ruins. Ethan sat several feet away, steady and composed, yet his heart thudded like he was standing on the edge of a cliff. Judge Ravenwood's voice carried a solemn calm. "Miss Rivera, do you understand that relinquishing parental rights is permanent?" Maya nodded, chin quivering. "I do, Your Honor." "And you are doing so voluntarily?" A tear slipped down her cheek. "I'm doing this because I love him. He deserves more than struggle and pain. He deserves a life I can't give him." The judge studied her for a long, quiet moment, the kind that held more compassion than words. "Love," she said softly, "takes many forms, some of them unbearably difficult." Then she turned to Ethan. "Mr. Ward, you are aware that adopting a child with special medical needs requires commitment, physical, financial, emotional?" "I'm aware," he said firmly, "and willing." Judge Ravenwood nodded. "Then, pending a 6-month provisional period, I approve Mr. Ethan Ward as Luca Rivera's adoptive guardian." Her gavel hit the bench. The sound echoed like the closing of one story and the beginning of another. 2 hours later, Ethan stepped into the lobby of Aurora Child Services, carrying a small suitcase filled with Luca's few belongings, a couple of shirts, a pair of too small shoes, and Bunny, whose ear was now nearly detached. Luca sat on a worn sofa, his braced legs stretched stiffly in front of him. When he saw Ethan, his entire face brightened. "Bus man!" Ethan laughed softly. "Think it's time you call me something else." "What?" "Maybe Ethan." Luca tried the name on his tongue. "Ethan," he grinned. "Okay." Ethan knelt to eye level. "How would you like to come home with me today?" The boy blinked. "Home like real home?" "Yes, your room, your bed, your space." Luca's small fingers tightened around Bunny. "Can Bunny come too?" "Absolutely." And that was it. Simple words, but enough to change a life. The winter sun dipped low as Ethan drove Luca to his home in Northwood Hill, a stone house warmed by soft amber lights glowing through frosted windows. When they entered, Sophie Ward, Ethan's wife, stood waiting. Elegant yet gentle, she approached Luca with a cautious warmth, as if he were a tiny bird that might fly away if touched too suddenly. "Hello, Luca," she said softly. "I'm Sophie." Luca peered up at her, half hiding behind Ethan's leg. "You live here?" She smiled. "Yes, and so do you now." After a moment of hesitation, Luca reached out and placed his small hand in hers. Sophie's breath hitched slightly, the way someone reacts when hope touches them unexpectedly. That night, Ethan helped Luca settle into his new bedroom, a cozy space decorated in soft forest greens, with glow-in-the-dark stars scattered across the ceiling. But 5 minutes after Ethan tucked him in, Luca's wail pierced the quiet house. "Mommy," he sobbed, clutching Bunny so tightly its seams strained. "Mommy, don't leave me!" Ethan rushed in, heart squeezing painfully. He sat on the edge of the bed and gathered Luca carefully into his arms. "I know you miss her. he murmured, voice thick. Missing someone doesn't stop just because life changes. Will she come back? Luca hiccuped. Ethan swallowed hard. She loves you, he said gently, but she knew you needed help she couldn't give. She wanted you safe. But I'm scared. Ethan brushed a tear from Luca's cheek. I'm not going anywhere, I promise. Luca's breathing eventually softened. He looked up, eyes shiny and uncertain. Can you sleep here, next to me? Ethan spread a blanket on the floor beside the bed. I'll be right here all night. As Luca's eyes drifted shut at last, Ethan lay awake, staring at the ceiling stars. He had built empires, companies, legacies, but nothing had ever felt as sacred as this quiet, fragile promise. And somewhere downstairs, Sophie clasped her hands to her chest, listening to the soft sounds of two lives beginning to knit themselves together. A home that had felt cold for so long was finally warming again. Spring arrived late in Aurora that year, drifting in on soft breezes that carried the scent of blooming lilacs and thawing earth. On the morning of May 22nd, the sun spilled through the towering windows of Riverstone Family Court, turning the marble floors gold. Ethan held Luca's tiny hand as they walked inside. The boy wore a little navy suit, his blonde curls combed neatly, his brace polished and wrapped snugly around his leg. He looked both solemn and excited, like someone standing at the edge of a story he didn't yet know he was the hero of. Sophie followed just behind, carrying Bunny, the beloved, battered bunny who had survived everything with Luca, its ear now hung by a single thread, but Luca refused every offer of repair. It's perfect like this, he always said. It remembers stuff. Today, Bunny would remember something new. Inside the courtroom, Judge Ravenwood sat with a gentler expression than the one she had worn months earlier. She had seen countless families collapse under the weight of life, but she cherished the rare mornings when she got to watch one come together. Good morning, she greeted. We're here to finalize the adoption of Luca Rivera by Ethan and Sophie Ward. Luca squeezed Ethan's fingers. Is this where I get to stay forever? He whispered. Ethan knelt. You already belong with us. Today just makes it official. Judge Ravenwood extended a hand to Luca. Come here, sweetheart. He shuffled forward, Bunny tucked under one arm, brace tapping softly against the wooden floor. Do you know why you're here today? The judge asked, her voice warm. Luca nodded, eyes bright. So I can be part of their family. So I can be their boy. And is that what you want? Luca looked back at Ethan and Sophie, at the people who woke for his nightmares, who held his hands through therapy sessions, who laughed at his strange number-obsessed drawings, who never once flinched at the brace or the tears or the broken pieces he carried. His answer was steady. Yes, I want that. Sophie's eyes filled instantly. Ethan had to swallow hard. Judge Ravenwood smiled, a soft, glowing smile that reached every corner of the room. Then by the authority of the state of Colorado, I declare that from this moment forward, Luca Rivera shall be known as Luca Ward, the legal son of Ethan and Sophie Ward. Her gavel struck, a sound that felt less like an ending and more like a heartbeat beginning again. Sophie burst into tears. Ethan lifted Luca into his arms as the boy erupted into joyous, pure laughter. Is it real now? Luca asked breathlessly. Are we a real family? Ethan pressed his forehead to Luca's, voice trembling. We've been a real family since the day I found you on that bench. Sophie wrapped her arms around both of them, and for the first time in years, the house Ethan carried inside his chest, cold, silent, missing something vital, felt full again. Later that evening, they returned home, where sunlight filtered through the big kitchen window and dust motes danced like tiny fireworks. Sophie baked Luca's favorite cookies, soft chocolate chip ones he always said tasted like warm, good feelings. Luca sat at the table drawing circles and spirals on a sheet of paper. Numbers, colors, patterns, his brilliant little world. "Look," he said proudly, holding up the page. "It's our family, but in numbers." Sophie smiled. "That's beautiful, Luca." He climbed into Ethan's lap without hesitation, head resting against his chest. "Dad?" The word, this time spoken without fear, without confusion, hit Ethan like sunlight after a long winter. "Yes, Luca? I think my heart feels bigger now." Ethan kissed the top of his head. "Mine too." Outside, spring wind rustled through the budding trees. Inside, laughter echoed, soft and bright. A boy once abandoned on a cold station bench. A man who thought he had lost his reason to live. A woman who feared her heart had nothing left to give. And yet, love had threaded them together anyway. Some families are born through blood, others through choice. But the strongest of all are born through healing.